All right, welcome to the SnydeReport. I am your host, Gary Snyder. With me tonight is Jacob Stewart from the Indy Star. If you feel your ears are burning tonight or your eyes, it's because, yes, he is a former or still Republican.
Well, I'll keep my partisan leanings a secret, but for as far as the public's concerned, I'm not partisan. I have a variety of opinions all across the spectrum.
Man, I put you on the friggin' spot right off the bat. No softballs here.
For sure.
Jacob, take a few minutes here and just tell everyone who you are for those who don't, live in Indy, outside of Indy, and don't know what you do.
Sure. So I am the deputy opinion editor of the Indy Star, very old newspaper based out of Indianapolis. So my role there is so we get letters to the editor that we publish. I edit those. We have op-ed submissions from community members. We have 3 people on staff, 2 regular contributors that we edit. And so I work with James Briggs. He's a great boss, a very good writer. And he's been on before. So
we love James here. Love him. I mean,
yeah.
he's brings a perspective that a lot of times I agree with, but he does it in a very articulate way, a very thoughtful way.
For sure.
I'm glad that I don't really debate him.
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't want to debate him either. I've read his articles for several years, long before I was at the Star, and just the thoughtfulness and the good writing there is a big reason why I wanted to work at the Star. Him and I don't know if Michael, I'm sure you probably haven't had Michael Hicks on, have you?
Yeah, we've had Mike on, and we actually carry his weekly thing on our newsletter.
Nice. Yeah, he's great too. I've read his stuff for so long. He's a very smart guy. But yeah.
You can say I'm smart too if you want. Please clap.
Okay.
Well, I appreciate you coming on today. I wanted to have you on simply because I've been following you on Twitter and some of your tweets, and there's sometimes I go, what the hell is he talking about? But there's other times I'm like, that's a pretty good point. So I thought we would have you on because there were 2 tweets or two topics that kind of caught my eye. And I know you're doing a story on one of them, so you don't have everything written. But it had to do with the treasurer. Is that the treasurer of the state still investing funds in U.S. adversaries when there is a specific law that says they can't? Did I get that right?
So I don't believe he has direct control over it, but it's the Indiana Public Retirement System. So that's all state employees, I think local employees too, whether or not you're a teacher or whether or not you're, like I formerly was, a press secretary, working for the Senate. That's where your 401k essentially is invested in. So to some extent, there is some control over it. Like you can invest in individual things, but a vast majority of it is funds that you invest in. And so I, took a look at their last public equity report, which is December of 2024. It lists all of the investments that they're still invested in. And there was quite a bit invested in Hong Kong. I think I counted a little bit over 33 million. And Hong Kong is kind of in a weird position, considered an administrative unit of China. They kind of grant them a little bit more freedom than everywhere else, supposedly, but it still is under the control of China. And in 2023, there was a law that mandated that the public retirement system divest from China and CCP, the Chinese Communist Party associated entities. And so it seems like a loophole to me if they were able to get around that. If I was a Chinese business, I would just relocate to Hong Kong so they could continue getting that investment. But it's a little bit of a questionable gray area. And then there were some other investments, like a little over 2 million in Russia. And of course, we're currently engaged in what appears to be a proxy conflict with Russia. And then we are also investing, I think also around 2 million in Saudi Arabia, which we have a sort of questionable relationship with. The State Department lists them as a entity of concern, I think is the listing. And that's related to just human rights stuff, just a variety of other like geopolitical issues there. So, and while it's not particularly unusual for a public retirement system to invest in foreign countries. It is weird that we would be investing in companies and countries that are that high of a risk. Because the goal is usually to minimize risk. So I can't see how that's helped by investing in our people we are actively engaging in conflict with.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know my background, I worked on the Schwab active trader desk and options desk for a while and was an anti-money laundering officer. And a big deal was made about investing in our foreign adversaries, at least funds or companies that were held by or managed by foreign adversaries. And if I might be wrong here, but it also said that they could not invest in certain woke companies too, correct?
So there are a variety of laws that get to that point. Like I think there's one that's there can't be any state contracts with companies that divest, boycott, and sanction Israel. I'm trying to think of some other specific ones, but that definitely has been an issue. Then there's some anti-environmental or ESG
Right.
policies that we have. I knew I'd need to do a little bit more research, but there's definitely some laws that have that effect.
Because there's a whole set of laws now that dictate how the state retirement funds can be invested. And I found it odd, especially during the ESG. Was that it?
Yeah.
That it says you can't invest in companies that, are against Israel, which no
Right.
company is.
Right.
Or things like that. But you could invest in companies that we called them sin stocks. So, while some companies you can invest in that you can't invest in, like in Russia, they've outlawed that. But you can't invest in companies that maybe sell alcohol or produce alcohol, things like that. So it was kind of weird that was the way it was set up. But when we take a look at the you said 33 million that's invested in China or Hong Kong.
Right.
Does it list the companies that are involved, or have you reached out
It,
to get a statement from the treasurer?
it does. It lists each company that we're invested in. And the vast majority of that is in one. I think it was, if I'm remembering correctly, AIA Holdings, which I need to do more research in, currently working on that. I've reached out to the Indiana Public Retirement System and I'm waiting for comment. I've also reached out to the Treasurer's Office, trying to get a more full picture of all of our foreign investments outside of just the public retirement fund. And so I've reached out for comment. Nobody's said they have any information for me yet. So I'm still working on that.
Now you're going to be writing about this when you get everything together.
That's my plan.
Now, the current treasurer, and his name escapes me because I
Daniel Elliott.
Okay, he's been actually mentioned as possibly running against Diego at convention next year.
I believe
correct?
I've heard some rumblings about that. At this point, I'm doubting it. I think his name has been brought up in the past, and I think he's been opposed to it. I'd have to double check, but yeah, I'm thinking this session this time he probably won't.
Now, as far as the investments go, at what point do they say, maybe this columnist for the Indy Star is right and we shouldn't be investing in these things?
I think, drawing attention to it is really important. I know there were some stories that the Federalist had written a few years ago about Chinese farmland and different deals the IEDC was doing with Chinese affiliated companies. And I know, working in the Senate at the time, that was definitely brought up and it was like an issue, like a concern, that it may have pushed some senators to start thinking and not be able to hide behind all the secrecy that is so common in government these days. So I think that's probably the key thing, is just bringing attention to the issue. Because if you look right now, you're not going to be able to find a vast majority of where the state's investments are. That was the only public record, I think, that is available. And then there's some news releases in the past, about investments in certain countries. But as far as a full picture, we don't know that. We'll see.
Is that public knowledge, or is that
It's a public record, but it's not accessible. So I'm still going through the process of the APRA, the Access to Public Records request. And that could take, a bit. I'm hoping they'll find something soon and get it to me. But, government is so slow, they'll get it
Now
to me
is the Star
when,
going to pick up the dollar per page or whatever it is that they get you?
what's that?
I,
For the,
I said, is the Star going to pick up the fees that they charge you, a dollar a page or what?
we'll see. I don't know. I'll talk to my bosses about that and see what we can do. Either way, that's important information. So if I have to bear the cost, I will.
Hey, Jacob, can you hold through a quick break?
For sure.
You're listening to the SnydeReport. I'm Gary Snyder. We'll be right back.
Washington politicians came to Indiana to get us to cheat and redraw our legislative maps. They want you to spend millions so they can rig the system and silence your voice. Hoosiers play fair. We don't need their meddling. We need our elected officials focusing on what we need most, making our lives better, lowering taxes, and bringing down the cost of energy and groceries. So tell your legislators, don't let Washington insiders rig our elections. Solve real problems and earn our votes.
All right, this is the part of the SnydeReport where we thank our sponsors, and we have a growing list. So let's start with Robin Winston. Robin has been there when we first sent out our first email, 147 subscribers. We're now over 108,000. So thank you, Robin Winston, and helping us get the podcast going in the right direction. Next up is our good friend, former Congresswoman Jill Long Thompson. Her book, Across the Aisle, Why Bipartisanship Works for America. Get that anywhere you buy your books. Also, former two-term governor, two-term U.S. Senator Evan Bayh. Evan has been a sponsor of the newsletter, now jumps on board with the podcast. Congressman Andre Carson. Congressman Carson has been there from the start. We're glad to have him over here on the newsletter now. He needs your help to win re-election next year. So make sure you support Congressman Carson. Next up, State Representative Cherish Pryor. Cherish has been there from the start on the newsletter, joining us on the podcast now. So is State Senator Greg Taylor. I want to thank Senator Taylor for all of his support through the years. Next, we have a couple of new sponsors. First up is Indiana Citizen. You want to check out their new project, One Heartbeat Away. Do Christian nationalists have an agenda for Indiana? All you have to do is look at the lieutenant governorship and you can see right away that they do. So thank you, Indiana Citizen. Next up is Jump Laundry. You can visit them at jumplaundry.com. They have home pickup. They do your dry cleaning, wash and fold with, I might add, no judgments, and next day service. So if you're in a crunch for time, you don't want to do your own laundry, get a hold of Jump Laundry at jumplaundry.com or at 317-740-5011. And they will take care of all of your laundry needs. Welcome back to the SnydeReport. I am your host, Gary Snyder. Today we are speaking with Indianapolis Star assistant,
deputy opinion editor.
There we go. Why he said Jacob Stewart. Jacob, the other thing I wanted to touch on tonight, because it seems to be going to be coming to fruition here probably this week or next, and that has to do with the governor calling a special session. And I think that fate was sealed over the weekend when we had former first district congressional loser
Ruth Green.
There you go. See, a good host would have known that. She quit. There were two things that surprised me. Number one, she quit. Number two, they were paying her $275,000 a year to be, Homeland Secretary or something.
Yeah, Secretary of Public Safety, I think it is.
Wow, $275,000.
Yeah, you would have to threaten my life to get me to give up a job that pays that well.
Eh,
So clearly, she has a pretty clear path she thinks to victory. I think if she's willing to give that up, then there must be like pretty set in stone. Like the governor's got to call redistricting, but could be wrong.
and
But
she's
it
had to
seems
have
like
seen, she's had to, she, I mean, for you to quit that job, you would have to, at least for me, first of all, I don't know that I would quit it for the possibility of being a congressperson and making 170,000 a year.
right.
But you would have to show me maps and stats and numbers and say, I can almost guarantee you this job if you quit this one to run for Congress.
Right, you're right. And so we've had several maps pop up, some of which originated from anonymous accounts on X. And
Yeah.
so we really don't know what's happening. I think a lot of maps are just flying around,
I've
different.
got one too, but it's no one cares about mine. It would be like a 8-2
Yeah.
Democrat. Anyway, so now go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're good. Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think she's probably got some insider knowledge that there could be a special session for redistricting. We'll see what that map looks like. But I mean, in 2022, she was about 12,000 votes.
Yeah, it's like 53-47.
Right.
Yeah.
Something like that. And that was an interesting year because Roe v. Wade got overturned.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, there was a national backlash against Republicans for that. And I think that definitely played a role. I think another thing, too, is that I know Rep. Mervan kind of brought up the issue of unions, which is very, very important in Northwest Indiana, where
Mm-hmm.
there are the steel mills. Unions are well represented there. And I know that he made a point of calling her out for not explicitly supporting unions. I think she had one campaign ad out already. I don't know if that's changed. I know she mentioned Social Security, a lot about China, and bringing back American jobs, but nothing explicit about labor protections, I don't think. But that'll
Well,
be interesting to see.
yeah, because that map, boy, they're gonna have to reach out way past the region to
Mhm.
get that thing to where it would be a plus R seat.
Right. Probably deep into the rural counties below Lake and Porter counties. And I'm actually a region rat myself, so I, I mean it's interesting. There's been a lot of population growth in Lake County and Porter County recently, especially with the South Shore line being double tracked and
Mm-hmm.
people moving out of Chicago. I think has played a role. So it's honestly probably going to get harder. It's with the next census. So maybe that's why they don't want to do another census before they wait for redistricting. But it would be hard to do without stretching deep into the rural counties below Lake and Porter County.
Now, again, I think this tells us with her quitting that this is going to happen.
Mhm.
Do they go after Andre's seat too? Do you think they try to make it a 8-1 or 9-0?
That's a hard one. I think there would be more of a risk there. But then again, calling a special session is a risk to begin with. So, I mean, it's a question of how much quote unquote reward do they want. And I think it also depends on what the Trump administration pushes them to do. Because I think ultimately it is coming from the federal administration, this push for redistricting. So, I think it'll depend on what satisfies that itch for a 2026 midterm victory for Republicans, I guess.
And I recently had Beto O'Rourke and Colin Allred on the show, and they talked about what was happening in Texas at the time.
Mhm.
Indiana, I don't think a lot of people realize, maybe they do, that Indiana does not have Democrats in Indiana don't have the option they had of walking out. They don't even
Mhm.
have to invite them to the friggin' party to pass
Right.
anything in the special session.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the Republicans have had a supermajority for several years now, so they don't really need to ask the Democrats for any support at all. I mean, honestly, when I was working at the Senate, it seemed like their power had pretty much been reduced to getting media hits, and so they can't really walk off and expect to change anything now since they aren't needed for a quorum. that is definitely a very interesting difference between us and Texas. So I don't really know what the defense is there, besides just whipping up popular support against redistricting. And there have been polls out, from various groups. I think most tend to be
It
left
doesn't
leaning.
matter. It doesn't matter. They're going to do it. They're going to do what they want.
Right.
And it really doesn't matter until they start paying a political price at the polls. And whatever the issue has been, they haven't. So why should they stop now?
Right. Yeah. I honestly don't think there is. I mean, there's not a lot of this. I don't think redistricting is an issue that's going to whip up a lot of voters.
No.
To be quite honest, I don't think that there's going to be much of a backlash. So I don't know if I was a hard partisan. I don't know what would be stopping me from doing that. But
I've said all along, people ask me all the time, what's it going to take? What's it going to take for someone in rural Indiana where I live? I mean, you don't get this in urban Indiana. Maybe you do. I don't know. I've never lived in urban Indiana. But what would it take for Jane Doe or John Doe to change that vote in rural Indiana? And redistricting is not it.
Right.
And it's always been my thought is that they're going to have to pay a price economically before they start making changes.
Right. I 100% agree. We've already started to see somewhat of a shift in terms of economic views.
At $7 I can't make hamburger helper now for under $10. What the hell?
Right. Yeah. It's definitely going to come down to kitchen table issues like economics, I think. People are going to pay a price. People won't be able to afford their homes. People won't be able to afford the basic qualities of life that have been cited for a long time as part of the American dream. And I think that's ultimately what it's going to take to get people to start changing. And maybe that's, in the next decade, maybe that's not. And I'm already feeling it, I know.
Oh, I am too. And, my mortgage has went up $300 in the last several years. Yeah. I can eat that, but there are people that can't.
Right.
I can afford $7 a pound for hamburger. I don't like to, but hell, I like my potato stroganoff, man. I've got to have that hamburger helper. You can go down the line. Insurance. My utility bill is over $300. I'm on, what the hell? I think that is the only way that it starts affecting people's votes up here in rural Indiana. And a friend asked me, do they worry about their wallets or brown people being in charge? And I'm like, well, they shut restaurants down for a day here, the Mexican restaurants, because rumor was ICE was in town. And I read the comments. So I don't know if it's economic issues or not, but I think it is. And, eventually when they feel the pain, which they are starting to, and unless something changes, they're going to even more, it really doesn't matter.
For sure.
Jacob, anything else you wanted to cover tonight before we let you run?
Well, speaking of rural issues and utility bills, I just came from the Google data center.
Man, that is turning into something else, isn't it?
Yeah, they just had, so today was when they called down so to back up a little bit, an unelected board approved a rezoning commission or petition for Google for 467 acres of farmland in Franklin Township, which is the most rural part of Marion County. Then today, the local city councilor called down a review of that petition, which is going to be heard on this 22nd. Lots of people there. Honestly, that's probably one of the most bipartisan issues I've seen. People on the right, the local city councilor is a Republican, was right there at the protest against the Google data center, along with the socialist city councilor in Indianapolis, Jesse Brown. So, it's definitely an issue to focus on when it comes to those kitchen table issues. It seems abstract when you're talking about the data centers, but ultimately I think for a lot of people, this is something where they are riled up about it because it has such a concrete impact on their electricity bills. So I think that's,
and tell us why, for people that don't know, data centers use a huge amount of energy and water, or is it just energy?
It's both. And there were some people around saying that they've advanced on the water stuff and they're not going to use as much. I don't think that's the case with the data centers we're talking about in Indiana and Indianapolis specifically.
Because we get all the high tech shit here, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, so like you said, data centers use a ton of electricity, and these new ones, especially because they're powering AI. And it's not even just supply and demand. So we have a lot of laws in Indiana that basically let the utility monopolies trample all over you. They can build new power plants and pass off the cost to consumers, regular households, while they're building the plants. So they don't even have to wait until they're in process and they're actually being used. So the project could fail and you'd still be on the hook for it. So that's a big thing. We've already had a ton of rate increases across the state because of that. The utility monopoly is building new power plants for the data centers and passing off the cost to consumers. They prevent a lot of independent energy providers from stepping up to fill in the gaps because no one can sell power directly to a consumer in Indiana without going through these utility monopolies. And there's just a ton of other state laws that make it really, really hard as a consumer when a data center is coming to your neighborhood and your community. Your electricity rates will increase. And on top of that, they pay no state taxes on electricity for 50 years under a state tax break.
Of course they don't.
They largely get property tax abatements. So, I mean, I think the one in Indianapolis had agreed to pay like $1 million a year. And this is like millions of dollars of investing, millions of dollars of electricity. So it's like pennies on the dollar compared to what they're spending and what any other investment in the area would bring. So it's pretty significant. There's really not much of a benefit. Like,
it's almost like the billionaires continue to get the tax breaks while we continue to fund them.
Yeah, exactly.
Jacob, anything else?
Nope, I think that's it.
Jacob Stewart, thank you.
Yep.
I am Gary Snyder. He is not. He's Jacob Stewart from the Indy Star. This is the SnydeReport, and we are out.
Thank you.